Good evening. On this 19th day of November, my name is Lincoln Ombogo. I'm making my debut on this show, stepping in for Frederick Mutiriri. Nevertheless, a lot is happening in the country, including the very public divide, which is the BBI divide. It's very unfortunate that BBI is being reduced to an individual and political party affair. The BBI, an initiative brought about by the famous handshake at the steps of Harambee House that was crafted to bring peace in Kenya, but instead it has resulted to our everyday political conversation and through a war of words between two sides. But what about the other side, the Kenyan side, the Wanjiku side? What are the challenges befalling Kenyans every day? Why is the Kenyan presidential election too contentious every election year? Why are we experiencing a ballooning wage bill and massive public debt? Why is corruption rampant in Kenya? Why is Parliament and the judiciary not as independent as they should be? Why is the level of poverty among our people too high? Why do many Kenyans lack morals? Why is the Kenyan youth unemployed and the rate is just overwhelming? And finally, why is COVID-19 still a pandemic more than 10 months later? Sadly, 17 patients have today succumbed to the disease, bringing the fatality to 1,330. But nevertheless, schools are open. Teachers and students are still getting infected, a conversation absent in the political class mouths. Nevertheless, the ball is on our court. As a nation, how do we redeem ourselves from this quagmire? Welcome to this show. This is Tipping Point. I'm your host, Lincoln Ombogo, and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. We kick off the show with a question of the day. Is BBI a two-people affair? Let's keep this show as interactive as possible. Send in your questions and feedback to our SMS line 111 Comment on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube at Switch TV. My handle is at Lincoln Wumbogo. Joining me in studio is on my left, Mr. Mwangi Njuguna, governance expert, and on my right is Kisii Deputy Governor Josh Mangi. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And on Skype later on, we'll have a lawyer, Faith, who will be joining us, and she'll be telling us way much more. As I say it again, we'll start the show. Is BBI a two-people affair? Text us on 111 Also comment on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube at Switch TV Kenya. My handle is at Lincoln Ombogo. Gentlemen, Asanteni Sana, thank you for coming. Is BBI a two-people affair? But first, let's hear what Raila Odinga had to say this 2 days ago about the BBI and collection of signatures.
That on Thursday, me and the president are going to lead the country in the signing, launching the signing of the document, or collection of signatures for the document. So there will be some leaders who will also sign.
I mean, gentlemen, that is Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga is Baba. Him and Uhuru Kenyatta have been driving the BBI show, and the reggae seems to have taken a pause. You know, he seemed so sure that the signatures will commence, the collection of signatures will commence today. This is Thursday, we are here, no signature collection. DG, what do you have to say about that?
You know, Wambugu, first and foremost, let me answer the question. Is BBI a two-person affair? Yes and no. Initially, it was supposed to be a Kenyan affair, but now it's becoming a two-person affair with Prime Minister Raila Odinga pushing this agenda, and Deputy President William Ruto requesting and even begging that let us go the consensus way. So it's becoming a two-people affair, which is very unfortunate. Now, we speak about the collection of signatures that was supposed to begin today. Wambugu, let me ask you. So people are signing for what? I mean, that is the question I kept on asking myself. We are signing for what? Because people are supposed to sign signatures, collect signatures once the bill has been published. The bill that we are going to vote for, yes or no. The questions have been set. See, as we speak right now, we have a document that first and foremost has not been read. People have not read the document.
Have you read it yourself?
I've read it myself, but I'm not everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm privileged. I've read it, but not everybody has read it. So what are people collecting signatures for? And that's why I allowed the president for postponing the collection of signatures until this thing is properly agreed upon, a bill, the BBI bill is passed or is published, so that you will be asked to sign a signature. You see, when you sign, you are agreeing that let us go to the
its
referendum.
contents.
Exactly.
But I think
So the president was very correct. He
when-
acted presidential.
when DG, when you say that it was a people affair and now
Yes.
it's not,
Yes,
how
it's
was
not.
it a people affair in the beginning?
It was a people affair because once a committee was set, the committee of elders or experts or whatever, they went round collecting views from people. They came to Kisi, I gave my views. Other people gave their views. So it was a people affair because it was being collected. Now, once there's been views have been collected, it was supposed to go back to the people to see that what we proposed is what's contained in that document.
So did you-
Personally, I proposed that in order to contain excessive powers, in order to keep the government in check, we should create the position of leader of opposition. So that when Raila Amolo Odinga gets 7.5 million votes, but he does not become president, he does not feel that he has become useless. He should become leader of opposition with the shadow government.
Let me stop you there.
Yes.
From my conclusion, based on what KC Deputy Governor Mr. George Mwangi has said, in the beginning, it was a people affair,
Yes.
but towards the end, and the end is what matters most.
Yes.
It's no longer a people Kenyans affair. It's now a two people affair. Mr. Njuguna, what do you think? Is BBI a two people affair?
I will also say the same, yes and no, but I will incline more.
Yes and no in the beginning.
Because you know, the reason why I'm saying yes is because right from the conception of this whole debate or whole thing about the BBI, I want you to try to remember or to flash back. How did we get to this situation of the BBI? Remember, we had the elections in the 2017, and then there were all this manner of chaos where some people were actually contesting actually refused to concede defeat. And what happened? There were a lot of chaos all over in our country, and the president, in his own wisdom, decided to go and look for his main opposer, who is Raila Odinga, and that's where we got now the handshake. It's from the handshake that the two leaders, whom are actually respected very much in our country, sat down. In fact, they always tell us that they sat there for several hours trying to discuss what is ailing our nation. And then they came up with 9 points. There is the challenges that are actually facing our nation, the two of them. So one, you know, our constitution actually
So you're
tells
saying,
us-
Mr. Njuguna, that
Yes.
even from the beginning,
Yes.
it was a two people affair.
Exactly.
The handshake was a two people affair.
It was.
Now, towards the end,
And even the way it has actually been progressing, you have been seeing a situation where even the task force itself, the selection of the task force, were done. We don't even understand which criteria they used to determine who will be a member of this task force. And that is why you can see now, in fact, I was surprised the other day to hear the president say that even there was a third party. It sounds funny because he actually, it's like he's confessing that initially it was our two people's affairs, and then there was a third party who is the Deputy President, William Ruto. When he said, he actually confessed at Bomas that William Ruto was also part of the people who gave out the names of the members of the task force. So
are you disagreeing with that?
what I'm trying to say is that it's not actually a really affair of the whole nation.
Yes.
It is something that was actually brought up by two individuals, and then it was they tried then to package it to appear like it belongs to the Kenyans.
Mr. Njuguna, Mr. Mangi,
Yes.
we'd like to hear the views of our other guest, former Deputy Speaker Farah Maalim. So I think we can take a short break because Farah Maalim is in studio, and immediately after this, Farah Maalim will be telling us as well what he thinks. What he thinks is a BBI a two people affair. We now take a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Tipping Point. My guest tonight, Farah Maalim, former Deputy Speaker, and just close to me is Josh Mangi, Kisii Deputy Governor, and next to me on my left is Mwangi Njuguna, a governance expert. The question we're asking tonight, the question of the day, is BBI a two-people affair? We've had the views of Mwangi Njuguna and Josh Mangi. Farah Maalim, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Do you think BBI is a two-people affair?
It's a
Two-people affair.
You know, when you are talking about a constitutional making process, it is ordinarily, mainly historically, a process that started by a small number of people. The United States of America, the mother of constitutions in the world, the first basically so-called fully fledged constitution that we have. It was done only, by the way, by delegates from 13 states, what was called the 13 independent states. And there were only 55 of them. Those 55, and the actual very active ones, you could count them on two hands. Hamilton, Madison, Washington was there, but he was not one of the very, very active ones. Jefferson. Yeah, you literally could count them on two hands. So it's an intellectual process. It's a historical process. It's a process that essentially entails a lot of knowledge being put together. And you know, the centerpiece of that is that patriotism, the need to keep that nation together. And we're not very far off from what the original founders of the American Constitution, the state they were in at the time, and the state we're in right now. We are 43 different nations brought together by a colonial. They came together independently themselves. First of all, they fought for their war of independence, and then came together as 13 independent states. Now, because we're coming together, you don't have to have the whole population. That's why we have representative democracy. You send people to parliament to go and represent you. You don't have the whole population of the country. But of course, when it comes to the bottom line, when certain very fundamental changes have got to be made into the Constitution, our own tradition right now, which is a very young tradition, is only 10 years old from 2010 to today, is that we will seek a referendum to get the approval of the people. So far, the process, the way it's being done, in my opinion, it's being done in the manner constitutions have been done in the past. You don't have to have the whole nation getting involved in that debate. As a matter of fact, those first 55 delegates, did not go around the states to go and get the opinions of the farmers, the industrialists, the loggers, all that, the sectors of the society itself, the religious sector. They didn't go. They were the ones who discussed that. So in a sense, the fact that two people got together and the process expanded into a much bigger one. And we've had this committee, and they went around the country to collect views. Now, the litmus test is in what is the final product. If that final product is going to reflect the views and the aspirations of the broader Kenyan society, then of course it's a legitimate document, and you can say this is a job well done. If it's not going to represent that, then because you're going to subject it, there are fundamental issues that are going to go through these changes. You know, when you have to do something about the power arrangement, the executive, and the legislature, then of course you have to go to the people. So the test of the pudding is in the eating, and let's see how Kenyans are going to respond to that. So, at this stage, I don't see why people should make a lot of hullabaloo about the fact that this did not have that.
Everyone involved with it.
Yeah.
So it's perfect just to have the two involved for now.
Well, an idea always starts somewhere. By the way, the fact that the two of them came together does not give them a monopoly to that idea.
I mean,
there are people who have talked about that. For example, I'll give you a simple example.
Clearly, Mr. Farrow, the only issue we've had is from the Tanga faction. They feel left out. And you know, we were supposed to start collecting signatures today, and Raila Odinga seemed so sure that we are going to start collecting signatures today. And we'll just look at a quote by Kipchumba Murkomen. I congratulate President Kenyatta for going against all odds, and now, postponing the collection of signatures
Look,
and all pressures.
yeah, the wisdom itself on the correctness, or rather the moment itself, what you call the constitutional moment itself, is in my opinion something that takes a lot of wisdom. It doesn't have to be seen only from one side. There has to be that broad consensus. And if the president, in his own wisdom, felt that he needed a wider consensus than he had before, I think that's a good thing.
Clearly,
in any case,
Farah,
it does not.
clearly.
It does not. It does not.
It did not seem to involve William Ruto from the word go. And now,
Look.
it seems like
Can I tell you something?
Yesterday,
yesterday,
yesterday President Kenyatta and William Ruto held a long meeting, and earlier on, Raila Odinga, who I think spoke for Uhuru Kenyatta, has said that we're not going to change this BBI report, not even a word of the BBI report. Everything is going to go as it is. Now that we're not going to collect signatures, we don't know when we're going to collect the signatures. Does this insinuate that there is room for changes in the document?
Let me say something before the speaker
Before
continues.
our response.
Let me, first and foremost, it's not true that it's only Tanga that is raising issues on this document.
We've had religious leaders
The
too.
judge is firmly opposed. The MCAs are firmly opposed to being graduates. The Senate is firmly opposed to being relegated to a lower house. The women are firmly opposed to being removed from the house where they make laws, where they are funding, to the Senate, where they will be pretty much more like a lower house. So it's no truth and no tanga. Very many factions, very many groups of people. The pastorates have their own issue.
Yes.
Their own issues. The agriculturalists from Central are also raising this. So a number of groups have come up with various demands. While it's not possible, as Speaker said, you cannot accommodate everybody, but they are the basics that you need to look into. It is true that the American Constitution was essentially drafted by three people, Madison, Jefferson, and Franklin. But then Washington was there. He was the general, he was the leader, he became the first president. But we do not have to go back to 283 years ago, so that we can also say that because it was done by only three people,
Let me stop you there. Let's take a look at what William Ruto had to say about having a consensus
let me just say something before you go to that.
It's taken us 2 years, has so many gaps, and is so controversial that unless you accommodate the views of the various stakeholders, we will end up with a lose-lose outcome. Those who will attempt to pass this document will end up with a bad constitution.
You see,
you had William Ruto.
Yeah. A constitution is a living document. A constitution is a living document. You don't have to get everything right now. This constitution is only 10 years old. And you don't have to wait taking certain decisions on the constitution to create, to accommodate certain fundamental issues because you don't have it perfect.
Has it really gone through the test of time?
Just a moment.
10 years.
Just a moment. It's gone through the test. It's gone through the test. Yeah, it's gone through the test. And 10 years is, look, the American Constitution had, 37 amendments? And these 37 amendments, most of them, I think the last one was done, I can't remember, in the 70s or 60s, something like that. I can't remember the dates. But yes. So it's still open to a lot of what you call amendments. The fact that there's a realization that this country cannot go through what it perennially goes through every time there's an election. And there's a need now to, for lack of a better phrase to say, building bridges. That we are building bridges, we're bringing the nation together. The content itself has got to seriously reflect that. And I want to believe that.
Does it reflect that?
By and large, we don't know the final document. You don't know the final document yourself. We have to see the final document to see what it reflects. Where there are lacunas and there are gaps. Hang on a minute. Can I just finish?
Let me just cut you short. Then why did Raila want us to, collect signatures if there's going to be a final document that is going to be fine-tuned?
You see the fact that You know, a constitution belongs to the nation. And they're the leaders in the nation. There are many leaders in the nation. And they all had their own issues and ideas. The fact that a certain idea is not shared that wholly by one leader or the other is in my opinion, not such a big deal. Even in the American Constitution, that inception itself, there were differences. And some of the differences were between people who were very, like the Federalist Papers, you know what I mean, those for the idea of the federalism and those who do not go for the idea of federalism. And there were some of the icons, some of the doyens of the Constitution itself, who disagreed on certain finer, parts. Now, the fact that you can disagree on this, Raila can hold this view, and I can hold this view, or Uhuru can hold this view, Kalonzo, Mudavadi, and Wetangula, there can be certain disagreement, is, in my opinion, neither here nor there. We will just have to see what is the final document, what can be done. I mean, and if you try to say that a constitution has to be perfect for it to be passed, we have our own experience. We tried to do that from independence until 2010. And if those of you who followed how that constitution, it was initially done by a committee of experts. When the committee of experts went in there, it was subjected to a parliamentary committee, what was called the Parliamentary Select Committee in Naivasha. And when it came in there, we made the bar so high that for any of those articles to see its own life on the floor of the House being debated, both for amendments or whatever it is, that you had to generate 2/3 majority. So out of the 157 amendments that were proposed by members of parliament, none of them saw the light of the day on the floor of the House, because none of them could generate the requisite numbers, the 2/3 majority numbers, for it to see the light of the day on the floor of the House. The idea was, let's get this constitution, and then let's deal with the challenges of the constitution as we progress forward. When I started by telling you the American Constitution went through 37 amendments, ours has not gone through a single amendment in 10 years. You understand my point? So there is need to go through those things. And what I am saying myself is, it might be not that perfect. It might be certain, to a certain extent imperfect. Let's get it done. We get down what we can do, and then we progressively keep on also working on the areas that we feel that they are not.
Mr. Njuguna is banning. Mm-hmm. Do you think this document is rushed?
You see,
do you think BBI is rushed?
I think I'll just
like to respond to Farah.
Try to respond to Honorable Farah,
please,
because he has actually tried to borrow a riff from the American Constitution and the way it was brought up, and he has just told us about how it was actually a work done by a few individuals. I agree with him that even revolutions are not started by the many people. Actually, it's not the multitude that brings revolution. However, I would just like us to remember that if you look at the history of the constitution making in our country, you realize that almost every time that we want to change constitution, there has always been a majority consensus, especially amongst the Wajiko in the whole nation. Like if you take an example of 1992, when the multitude or the people were actually agitating for the multipartyism, every corner of this nation, you realize that it's like we were in agreement that we want to have multipartyism in our nation, which pushed even the President Moi to appeal that Section 2A. If you look at the 2005 referendum, even before the referendum, you realize that every Kenyan was feeling that we need to have a change of constitution. Only that the document that was presented to Kenyans, the Kenyans themselves said no to that document. When you look at 2010 constitution, the same. Actually, it was people's driven. But when you look at the current changes that we are being told to bring about in our constitution, you realize that even those who are supporting the amendments proposed by the BBI, most of them do not even, they also don't understand why we have to change.
Do you find anything wrong with our constitution?
Okay, of course, as you know, the constitution there is no book that is no document that is perfect except the Bible and Quran. But if you look at the way that the push that is being, the push that we have from the Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, somehow Kenyans are feeling like there could be some hidden agenda. I don't know why, because it seems like it's an agent. It's an agent issue.
Hidden agenda.
Because
hidden agenda. Do you think there's a hidden agenda?
You know, I'll give you a very honest answer. You see, when you in constitution making and even law in legislation, when you are creating a registration, when you are making a law, there is always a mischief you want to cure. Now, the mischief in this amendment, this referendum, according to the president, is the inclusivity factor, the issue of winner-take-it-all situation. Now, when we're talking about the inclusivity factor here, we're not talking about you and me. No, we were talking about a presidential candidate like Raila Odinga who gets 7.5 million votes in a contested election, and once he loses, he goes home with nothing.
That is the most contentious part.
No. So when you go home with nothing, there is an encouragement that now sasa nanda wapi. So how do we? That is how we end up going for post-election violence. When people going, that's how we end up having a handshake. But if we want to solve this problem, we create a position of leader of opposition, so that that man who becomes number 2 in the presidential elections becomes first and foremost gets nominated to parliament. Then he becomes a leader of opposition, and then he's given money to run a shadow government. He has ministers who keep the government on check. For example, if in 2017, Raila had become a member of parliament and become a leader of opposition, and then he would have formed a shadow government that would have kept the UHURUTO government on check, he would not have gone for handshake. You go men in parliament so that it can keep the government check and essentially begin campaigning for 2022. For me, that is the mischief we wanted to form, and that is why actually I support this BBI, because it is solving that basic problem that we had. I think if we bust this BBI, I don't think anybody will go to the street again, because it will be like, if I lose a presidential election, I'll become a leader of opposition and begin campaigning for the next election.
Talking about
opposition.
However, is there an opposition now as we speak?
But that's, let me finish, Madam. However, while that is a very good provision in this BBI, and also that 5% revenue to count is a very good thing, but then we must be realistic and look at the amendments that will make this BBI not be passed. One of it is the requirement that members of the county assemblies must be graduates. Now, 8% of members of county assemblies are not graduates today, and you're asking them to pass that bill, which is going to fire them. They want to bring this bill down. Now, you are asking churches, who, you know, Kenya is pretty much a religious, 10-15% are Muslims, but majority are Christians. And their leaders are saying, we are not satisfied with this document. They want to bring it down. That is why I agree with Ruto when he says, hey, let us build a little bit of consensus. We may not agree 100%, but we'll create some consensus so that when we go to vote for this document, it will not be too divisive. It is misnomer to say that we can have an uncontested referendum. A referendum must be contested.
Yes.
We must have yes and no. But then we can remove obvious divisive issues, so that when we go to vote for this thing, we are almost sure that we can cure that main mischief, the post-election violence, this nature of handshakes, the governments. We can cure this by making sure that number 2 becomes a leader of opposition and is properly financed to keep the government of the
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Do we have opposition in Kenya? We don't.
We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Sending you feedback. Switch TV at Lincoln Obogo on all my social media handles, and on our SMS line 111 Father Marlin, you've been the Deputy Speaker for the longest time. Yeah. Do we have an opposition in Kenya today? Or is the government its own opposition, the ruling party?
To begin with, let me tell you, there is nothing that is a panacea to the problems in the country. To begin with, when you complain so hard that somebody has had 7.5 million votes here and he does not have any power, Trump has had 73 million and he doesn't have any power. He loses and he goes home. It's a question of the kind of a system that you want to have. Now, once the system comes in, you can't force the system to change because the system is the system. You get my point? So to say that the person who lost out, and you know, we have a constitution that has got some bit of a problem. Kenyans, we tend to fantasize things we borrow from elsewhere, including at that high level of the leaders. When we were making this constitution, we tried to borrow something from the German system, American system, the Westminster system, and then put it together. In a sense, some of those things cannot work together. It's like you pick up an Audi vehicle and you want to have a gearbox from Mercedes and a diff from Toyota, and you know, you can't. You have to line up these things so that they're able. You have to look at what was the intent, the spirit, the object of the framers of those provisions of the Constitution itself. When you look at the British Constitution, which is our former colonizer, you know, you have to study the history. The head of the government, the head of the state is a queen, and the head of the government is the prime minister. You see what I mean? Like some countries try to adapt that, like India and Pakistan and the rest of them, by having a ceremonial president there, but still maintaining the power within the prime minister. And you know, prime minister is the person whose party has got the majority in parliament. And you know, which basically, you will not even be looking for national votes. Everybody will be looking for their own constituency votes. South Africa has got a different thing, which is a proportional representation. You just go and vote for a party. Once you vote for a party, the party that comes to power is the party that has got the majority. And if that party gets 60% of the overall national votes, then it gets 60% of the members of parliament through a list.
In the long run. In the long run.
What I'm trying, let me just explain.
Do you gentlemen think that this BBI report will leave Kenya a more cohesive nation?
No. You
or a divided nation?
You see, we try to deal with these things in a sensational manner. Let's deal with these things with a lot of sobriety and a lot of knowledge and a lot of a desire to try and study the different systems and see which one serves us best. You get my point? So when we just go look at it and say, oh, how they do in South Korea, this is how they do in there, and then you borrow this and you borrow that and you bring them together, it's got a problem. Now what we're trying to do is, in my opinion, have a system similar to what the Ugandans have and what the Tanzanians have.
Is it working in those nations?
In both cases, it seems to have worked. But then again, it's going to be different from the way we want to have it ourselves. It says, in Tanzania, it's the ruling party, the party that has the majority in the House, that is going to produce the Prime Minister. To be appointed by the President.
Let me now stop you there, gentlemen. The Kenyan government declared Huduma number a mandatory requirement for each Kenyan, and every Kenyan must acquire one before December 2021, as all other identification documents will be rendered obsolete. The mass registration was challenged in court by civil society organizations working on matters of citizenship, legal identity, human rights and data protection, citing inadequate frameworks to guarantee data privacy and protection. A three-judge bench ruled that it was within the law and gave the government a go-ahead with the process. The legality of the listing is, however, in doubt after High Court nullified the Miscellaneous Amendment Act 2018 that operationalized the Huduma number. Although the government said it will appeal the decision, Huduma number is a biometric mass registration system that allocates a unique identification number and will be used to identify all persons in the country and also verify personal data while accessing government and private sector services. Let's look at what Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i had to say about Huduma number.
To be served in a public office, you must produce this. But between now and 12 months from now, you have time to collect your card. And how you collect your card, utaambiwa na SMS. Fulani wa fulani, Bwana Wanyanga, kadi yako iko pande ile, kuja uichukue.
So, this is Huduma number. Here it is.
First and foremost,
is it legal? I mean, LSK chairperson Nelson Harvey. They say that it's illegal. The Huduma number is illegal because the current ID number that we have is in the Constitution. The Huduma number is illegal.
That is not correct. You know, first and foremost, it's not true that the Huduma number will replace all the other identification documents. That's not true. You see, you'll still be able to have an ID card. Once you become 18 years of age, you have an ID. You still have your birth certificate. You still have your PIN number for tax purposes. You still have a driver's license. The Huduma number is the equivalent of the American Social Security number. Now, the Social Security number is a unique way of identifying every American citizen, regardless of the age. Now, an ID, you only get an ID once you turn 18. Now, this Huduma number is, you know, it has been done in other countries. Where I agree with Farah that we must not adapt everything that has been done in other countries, but Huduma number is exactly the same as the Social Security number in America. It does not replace all the other identification documents, but it's a composite document that it authenticates. In fact, when you put in that number, it will give you the other identities. Now, is it legal? I don't think so, because what the High Court ruled is that it's okay, but it needed to make sure that in the process we must protect data. We must make sure that we don't infringe on other people's rights. So, and it's one of the, I think the document, one of the acts that the Senate is supposed to pre-approve. It was done only by the Assembly, but it was supposed to be, they needed to get concurrence from the Senate.
Did they?
So I don't know, but they were given I think 90 days, 60 days to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, they have not expired.
You see, it's, by the way, it does not have to be in the Constitution.
It does not in the Constitution.
It can be as a result of an act of Parliament. We already have a Registration of Persons Act in Parliament, in our own statutes, in our laws. And whether that basically caters for this also now, I think one needs to look at it a little bit more closely. But I don't think it's such a big problem. If it's going to be one document that will essentially entail all your information, including the information on your taxes, including the information on all these things, I don't have a problem with it personally. If the intention was to capture all these things so that you expand on the tax bracket, for example, you see what I mean? Monitor compliance, make it easier for one person to have only one document that has everything, including the driver's license and everything else, so be it. And insurance, if there's going to be a national health insurance, which we right now have, which is called the national, if there's going to be National Social Security Fund, which essentially is there because our country is going progressively towards being a welfare. That's why he said it's a welfare card in the US.
Yes.
But so be it. I have no problem. We're thinking and we're looking forward. But before I get to that, can I just ask you one question? Have you ever asked yourself, why are the churches opposed to this constitution?
Answer that.
No, the new constitution, rather the BBI. Why are the churches opposed to
Mr.
BBI?
Njuguna.
You see, I think one of the biggest challenge we have in our country is that our people don't trust even their leaders. Even the government itself, they don't trust them. In fact, even in that issue of Huduma number, one thing that you realize is that nobody is actually raising any pertinent issue on legality of these Huduma numbers. But just because our government seems to be in a rush while conducting almost everything that they are doing, and then they don't conduct the public participation in the right way, you realize that Kenyans feel like they are being harassed and forced to take up some of these things. You realize that something like Huduma number is something that will assist us, even myself and yourself, because you don't need to carry all these documents.
Let's answer this question. Why are judges opposed
to the
I'll tell you
issue of
something.
Huduma number?
BBI.
No, I think I was just coming back to the same thing. It's only that I wanted to share something about
people being skeptical about this.
Yeah, I'm part of the church members who are actually opposing to this BBI. I'm not opposed. Actually, I'm not opposed to BBI.
Mr. Njiguda, what issue do you have with the BBI as a church?
Not just as a church member, but also as a young person.
Yes.
As a youth, I am feeling like the BBI document is actually trying to bring, it's like a shortcut. It's trying to, it's what I would call a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Because if you look at the problem that the BBI is trying to cure, you realize that they have diagnosed the wrong problem. For example, if you realize that BBI, for example, has proposed the tax holiday for the young people. If you tell me that you want to give me tax holiday for 7 years while I start the business, one thing you should realize is that most of the Kenyan youth, over 70% are actually jobless. They do not even have the capital to even start those small businesses that you're talking about. So when you're talking about tax holiday, that you'll cure the problem of the youth through the BBI, that's a real, it's actually you're running away from the real problem. Because the real problem is we expect that our people should be provided with the seed capital so that they be able to start off the businesses. If you take, for example, the issue of the HELB, you give them moratorium for 4 years. It's like you're telling us that the government is not ready even to provide jobs for the young people, so that after you clear your university, you are even given four years to stay idle. It's like they are admitting that they are not ready actually to give us the jobs. So what I'm trying to say is this document, the church is not only opposing it for the reasons that maybe you tell us, but it's also, remember, the church, the young people whom we are talking about are also members of that church. So that is why you realize that the BBI sometimes, even getting to consensus, will be a big problem. We feel like we are trying to run away from the real issue, the real problem. Our constitution.
Let me give you just one thing. Mangi, before you answer, let me give you one thing. In my opinion, if you ask me in my honest opinion, why the church opposed to the BBI?
I want to give you the answer.
There's one reason.
Yes.
Everything else is my son here has been saying are very general things that everybody else can talk about. But when you look at, this is first of all a secular country. The constitution is expressed on that. It's a non-denominational, non-religious constitution. This constitution was opposed last time by none other than very vociferously by our current deputy president. And the reason why he opposed it is that he said, why do we have to have the Cadiz court in our constitution? It was expressly told it's a codified thing. They have their own code. The Christians, fortunately, unfortunately, do not have that codified. But you want to bring also a section on the Christians? Come, welcome. We can have that. And then, of course, he went and opposed that very hard and went all over the country in places, sometimes even insinuating that if this constitution is passed, there'll be a problem, a religious problem in the country. You see, you can be a minority. It's always the right of the majority to have their way, and the minority also to be protected. A constitution is a constitution that protects the weak, the meek, the minority. 80% of the population do not have a right to take away certain fundamental rights that are enjoyed by 20%. You see what I mean? Or 10% for that matter. And then he goes ahead and says, we have no apologies to make. This is a Christian nation. Who are you telling that is a Christian nation? Does anybody have? You see what I mean? So here you are trying to meddle for political purposes, for trying to ascend to power, religion and power quest.
We only have 1 minute left.
So when you look at the broader country, let me just explain.
What's your parting shot, Father?
My parting shot is that let's see first of all the final document, what it has. And a constitution is not supposed to be that definitive. It's supposed to be a flexible document. That basically it's a value document. Let's have all those values. Let us see how the power structure is going to be and whether it's going to solve our own issues which are pertinent to us. The things that essentially we experience after every 5 years election. And no, we kind of have a homegrown thing. If it does not solve 100% or 80% or 60% of that, we will go with what we have. We progressively continue right now. We might have to make a few changes even now as it is. And then we keep on doing this. It's a living document.
I want to answer
It's a living document.
I want to answer Mr. Speaker here. That you know, yes, in 10 seconds. Churches, 80% of Kenyans are Christians. That doesn't mean that we should trample on the rights of the Muslims. But what the churches are saying is that them who provide spiritual nourishment to the people of Kenya, 8% of Kenyans, go to church on Saturdays and Sundays. What the church leaders are saying is that we deal with these people every day. We are with them every day and we hear what they're saying. And what they're saying is that they are not satisfied with the way this document has been presented. They are speaking on behalf of the people.
What people will say.
No,
Mr. Jigula, Patrick Shot, Mr. Less than 10 seconds, please.
What are the specific issues that
less than 10
sets
seconds,
the
Mr.
church, aside, apart from the rest of the country? You see, the country is there. And there are many people who are Christians, but basically
I really wish we could continue this conversation next Thursday. Mr. Jigula, Patrick Shot.
I just want to urge our readers not rush so much into pushing us into a referendum. It is actually very expensive, and our country is actually going down to the drain in terms of the economy. The debts are too high. We need actually to think in terms of, let's not waste the whole BBI document. Let us identify the areas that we don't need to go for referendum. Let us implement them, and immediately, without necessarily going back to the referendum.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I appreciate it. The conversation continues next Thursday right here on Tipping Point. My name is Lincoln Obogo. Thank you, Mr. Farah Marling, former Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Josh Mwangi, Kisii Deputy Governor. And thank you, Njiguda Mwangi, a Governor's Expert. The conversation continues next Thursday. Good evening.